You grow up in a creative and renowned family where your father is a famous photographer in the world of fashion, and your mother is one of the first international models proclaimed a supermodel, and your stepfather is a major photographer for Vogue magazine. It's no surprise when my next guest, her name is Mia Fonssagrives-Solow, became an artist, and 7 decades later, she's still creating art in her own way. Welcome, Mia.
Thank you so much, Stewart.
Tell us a little bit about your family background and what
Well,
it's like growing up.
it was amazing. I always looked at my mother as mom. She taught me everything, how to change a tire, how to raise sheep. Irving taught me how to shear sheep, plant trees, and it was very hands-on with nature growing up. And nature has always been an inspiration for me.
You grew up in Manhattan and Huntington.
We had a
Wow.
farm in Huntington where we went every weekend and spent the summer. And I went to school in Manhattan during the week.
Well, those are such different worlds. Which did you like better?
I loved every kind of world. I've been exposed to so much, and I'm so lucky, with my mother and father being French and Swedish. We would travel to Europe to visit my grandparents in Paris and then my grandparents in Sweden when I was young.
What's the one thing that inspired you and put you on a path to where you are today?
Well, I think a lot of the way you process life, sometimes pain, sometimes joy, gets expressed in your work, whether you realize it right away or not. You later on you look back and you think, oh, they were getting divorced, when I was 7, and I painted these houses that were black with teeth in the window, and never thought about it then, but thought about it much later and realized that was the process. I've always been processing whatever is going on in my life through my art.
You went to the Parsons Schools of Design where you met another very unusual lady, Vicky Tiel.
Yes, we became best friends at Parsons.
How did you meet and why did you notice her and pick her out and become her best friend forever, which is even
Because
up to today?
we were both so different from the rest of the class.
Different in what way?
Well, in the way we dressed, the way we looked, the way we visualized the future of clothes and fashion and what we wanted to do. We were very, very different from the rest of the school, and we were kind of put together for being the naughty ones. And and we just had the best time being the naughty ones, coming up with crazy ideas. We were supposed to make 12 sketches, or they called them croquis. I don't know why, but that's what they were called. And then the teacher would pick out the one you would make for the designer that you were working with. And they were very, conservative designers. American women wanted sort of a Chanel look, which, has changed enormously over the years. But
Yeah.
we wanted to sell clothes to Americans, and that's from Paris because they all wanted a Paris label in those days. So that's what we ended up doing. But we ended up doing exactly our mini skirts, our wrap dresses, the patterned stockings, the crazy hats. It was just a total breakthrough from what was going on in the fashion world in New York at the time.
Well, in Paris, you were like young in your 20s. And here you are, you and Vicky, two wild and crazy gals in Paris. What was that like?
That was incredible. Incredible. It was, we had a fashion show at Parsons, and the designers wrote about us because the piece that we got to make was the piece that we wanted to make. And they wrote about us at the fashion show. Eugenia Shepherd, Bernadine Morris, all these fashion editors that were at the fashion show. then we got to Paris and we got to show 3 or 4 pieces with Louis Ferraud. And they recognized us right away from Parsons, and they called us 2 girls from America, changing the look. And overnight, it was like a gift to have this publicity and the ability to move forward in what we wanted to design. It was incredible. One thing came after another. First, there was a knock on the door, and it was Bert Silbert, who was the head of Paramount, getting the movie ready for Woody Allen. He said, "Would you girls like to design the clothes for Woody Allen's first movie?" And being sassy and full of myself, I said, "Yes, but only if our names are in red against a blue Technicolor sky." And he said, "We can arrange that." We were so full of chutzpah and gall and energy. It was wonderful.
Well,
And
look
so
how it worked for you.
I know. You just have to get out there and say it and do it and say what you think. And we did.
Well, you moved on from there. What did you move on to?
You mean after designing clothes for 10 years?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got
Well,
tired.
you see, in my gut, I had always worked at Dalton. When I got kicked out of the art class, that was 6th grade, they said, "You can take shop with the boys." And most of the girls took home ec and art. And so I got to take shop with the boys, and a world opened up to me, using saws and drills and sanding and shellacking, and the smell of the shellac, the wood, the boys. It was mind-boggling. And I had that in me all the time from 6th grade. And I was always painting, but I wanted to do more than paint. So I left Paris. The business didn't need 2 directors. We built it together. We had the success together to get it started. And it worked perfectly well without me. Vicky was brilliant in selling things. And, it didn't need 2 bosses. So I left and went to California to really learn woodworking. But it didn't start out as, it was in French, they say le biais, the way to get to what you want to do. So I was painting on wood, and then I thought, let me cut the shape out. And then there was this negative space and the positive space. And the negative space became very important to me. And I started putting the piece back in the negative space. So there was one figure that was positive, one figure around the positive one that was negative. And it just blossomed from there. Then once I got the piece out, then I started making the sculpture.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your late husband, Sheldon Solow.
Right.
He had a art collection that
He
was
did.
worth over $500 million.
Okay, my husband, he had a terrific eye. Just look at the buildings he put up in New York. They're magnificent. And he had a wonderful eye for sculpture, for painting. And we had such fun. We traveled all over Europe, Italy, France, England, and he collected. It was always his collection. My son has taken over. He is continuing the foundation at 9 West 57, and people can visit it anytime they want. And they have constantly changing exhibitions of the work.
And I have one more question.
Okay.
What's in the future for Mia?
Oh, well, for years, I made these small maquettes in wood and bronze and lucite, and my dream was to make them large. So they're now 12 feet high, 8 feet high, 6 feet high. They're big sculptures, and I'm trying to get them out in the world.
Can they be shown outdoors?
Oh, all of them go outdoors. They're like cars. They weigh about as much as a heavy rowboat, and you put them on bases and they stay out through, I've had them out for 10 years now.
Well, if I could make a suggestion for a possible site, Lincoln
Yes.
Road on Miami Beach.
That would be
Anyway,
good.
it was really a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Stewart. It's been a pleasure talking with you.